On this episode of Newt's World, President-elect Donald Trump has recently named some people to key roles in the economy. Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Commerce, the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're going to discuss these appointments and the background and experience of his nominees. And what will President-elect Trump do to break inflation in January? Here to discuss these important topics, I'm really pleased to welcome back my guest and good friend, Charles Thorngren, founder and CEO of Legacy Precious Metals. Charles, welcome, and thank you for joining me again on Newt's World.
Oh, it's my pleasure as always, and thank you for having us back, Newt.
I always learn so much from you because you pay such careful attention to the economy. So let's talk about a couple of key appointments that President Trump has made. You know, he nominated Scott Bessent to be Secretary of the Treasury. He's a hedge fund billionaire, was an economic advisor for the Trump presidential campaign. My sense is that Bessent is very much in line with Trump. In one Fox News op-ed, he argued that using tariffs correctly is a powerful way to revitalize American manufacturing and industry. What's your sense of this whole tariff argument?
It's an interesting concept. On the face of it, it makes a lot of sense. If we want to do a couple things, increase sales of U.S. products, which is always important, reduce deficit by increasing tariffs, we can then minimize some taxation, which is always good. You get some top-down tax reductions and let that flow down. But I think the most important thing about it, it's saying that we're not living in the status quo. What we've done for the past 20 plus years isn't working the way that it's supposed to. Let's take a new approach. And the tariff makes a lot of sense. You have to look at the tariff and say, we're doing this for more than just fair trade, but we're also doing this to secure the power of the U.S. dollar. By increasing tariffs on nations, we're now telling them they have to carry more U.S. dollars. The threat to the U.S. dollar goes away a little bit now when China has to have 20% more dollars and Canada has to have 25% more dollars just for trade. There's something in there that I don't know if it was thought about, but when you really expand it out, it makes a lot of sense.
You know, I was really surprised that last year we imported $3.1 trillion in goods. We're the largest importer in the world, which I knew. But when you think about $3.1 trillion, you could apply a tariff and raise an amazing amount of money, which could then come back in the form of a tax cut to the American people, could also help balance the budget. And because our market is so much bigger than any other market in the world, it gives President Trump real leverage in negotiating with other countries.
I think that's a very big part of it. It's the leverage. President Trump gets in office, and what we do know is he's great at negotiating. And this is part of that. The tariffs are effective, not only for the financial side of things, but for the negotiation as well. And when we look at U.S. companies that produce overseas, if they now have to begin to pay more to bring them in, you're going to see jobs come back to America. You're going to see American products become a lot more competitive in price, which is really where we left off in the last administration for President Trump, bringing jobs back. It has more than one really valid point to it. And I think that's the important part we want to look at. It's not just, oh, we're going to make somebody pay more. It does so many things. The financial side, the security side, the negotiation side, and then bringing jobs back, bringing jobs here to America again, to where we can begin to say, we don't need to have an economy that's run by government employees. The private sector does it better. Let's put it back in their hands.
When you think about all this economic growth and the degree to which President Trump is committed to creating American jobs and raising the American standard of living, one of the key jobs is the Secretary of Commerce. I was fascinated that he picked Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick. You may remember that Cantor Fitzgerald lost more people on 9/11 than any other company, really lost about 2/3 of the people who worked for them in New York. And that Lutnick, as the head of the company, founded a foundation which ultimately raised $250 million to help the families of those folks. He's a very interesting, very energetic guy. What is your sense of having somebody like Howard Lutnick as Secretary of Commerce and how that will work out?
One of the interesting things, I think, when we look at this is there's compassion in the man. We see that by what he's done, right? He understands world economy, but also he's behind the idea that we start talking about tariffs. And that's going to really play into trade pretty significantly because we still want the trade, but we just want to make sure that we use the increased tariffs and the revenue it generates, but more importantly, the ability to negotiate trade agreements. And that's going to be Lutnick's biggest job is trade agreements. How do we get back to a place where U.S. products have equal access to the markets that we provide? How do we get China to have our products readily available like we do them? And this is where you need a nuance, but you also need the savviness of what a Lutnick's going to bring to that particular position. So being behind the idea of tariffs and using them for what they ultimately can be good for, raising revenue, but also, again, the most important part, that trade agreement and generating a fairness in trade again is going to be the lasting thing that makes the difference on this beginning conversation of tariffs and the whole trade division, what they're going to be working on. So I think that's going to be a very important part. And I don't believe most people are paying attention to that as much as they should, because this is a very important piece to that puzzle of generating economy and trade.
I think that's right. And I think it was clear when President Trump named him that he would be overseeing the office of U.S. Trade Representative. So Lutnick will really be the lead in dealing with foreign countries on the whole issue of trade and tariffs, and I think has a very big role to play. The other really interesting appointment is a very seasoned person, Paul Atkins, who previously served as the Securities and Exchange Commission under President George W. Bush, was named by Trump as his nominee to be the commissioner. Now, Atkins has a really deep background. From 1990 to 94, he served on the staff of two former chairmen of the SEC. He was a commissioner from 2002 to 2008. He's currently, however, and this is very interesting, I really want to get your response to this, he's currently the co-chair of the Token Alliance, which is a cryptocurrency lobbying group for the Chamber of Digital Commerce. What's your general sense of these efforts to create a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or something else?
Very interesting. Many people think because I deal in gold that I don't look at these other things, but I think cryptocurrency is an important step. You have a financial vehicle, but you have a financial vehicle that's not as manipulated as regular currency. And that's where it gets interesting, right? But you also, with cryptocurrencies, you are now sparking interest by many younger people into economics. They're getting valuable lessons on investing, on the economy, and how currency actually works. So there's a benefit to it from that aspect for the youth, but also just in trade as well. The ability to send money through a ledgered program like many of these cryptocurrencies are, it speeds up remediation of payments when you're involved in trade. And the bigger this market gets, the bigger trade application it has. You can begin to actually fund much larger trades, country to country trades through a cryptocurrency. It takes the power of financial regulations and modifies them. It modernizes them to a degree.
I think there's an effort to sort of weaken it and cripple it. And my impression is that Atkins has been an advocate that this is part of a complex future and that on a worldwide basis, it should be a growing component of how things happen. And I take it that you sort of share that this is a move that has risks, but at the same time, it may well be an inevitable part of the world that's growing out there.
I would agree with that. I often compare cryptocurrencies very much to an asset like gold and silver. It's an alternate form of currency. It's a way of safeguarding your investment against what inflation does to just the U.S. currency, right? Or what it does to every currency around the world. So it's a way of offsetting that. It's a way of finding another way to protect what you've worked so hard for. Now, do I think that cryptos are as safe as gold? No, not at all. There's so much movement. There's so much volatility into it. but it's a new form of currency. It's going to take a while. It's still in its infant stages. So as it develops and as it gets strength and support from the US government, that's going to help give it the security that it needs. It's going to help give it a plan to grow without the stumbles that you'll typically see in a new form of valuations for a currency as such. So I think this step behind it helps really solidify how strong it can be. And we have to recognize that it's here. It's not going away. We've seen it rise rapidly. We've seen it fall. We've seen it rise again. But what we haven't seen is people leave. There is a large majority of the population that believes in its value. So it makes sense to have someone in office that understands that and can help guide it to where it needs to be.
I'm very impressed with the sophisticated way you're integrating these kind of cryptocurrencies into a larger package and suggesting that they have some real advantages and other disadvantages, but that in a balanced portfolio, it's not illegitimate to consider them as part of a package that would also include precious metals and other kinds of investments. So you see that as sort of a permanent long-term pattern.
Absolutely do. And I think it makes sense because diversity is key to all things. So if we have something that is embraced as widely as it is, it makes sense to say, let's get it on board in our diversification packages, but do it in the right way. Do it in a balanced portfolio, as everyone should do. It makes sense. It has earned its place in a person's portfolio.
Two other people I want to ask you about. As you know, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation Chair Martin Gruenberg announced he's retiring as of the 19th of January, which is the day before Trump gets sworn in. His term actually didn't end until 2028. Why do you think that he is leaving, since he's been at the FDIC since 2005 and is the longest serving board member in the agency's 89-year history? Now, he served as chair twice, once under Obama, once under Biden. So clearly he's ideologically different than Trump. But are you a little surprised that he left us abruptly?
Definitely raises an eyebrow. But again, it goes back to what we've heard and we've seen. There is a politicalization of government that shouldn't be there. And there shouldn't be a politicalization of the FDIC. This is really a straightforward organization. It's meant to safeguard and ensure our banking and thereby our economy. So the fact that he's leaving right before says a lot. It says so much more than words could have said had he tried to explain it. Now, it does make me question a couple of things. Is there some problems there that he knows will be brought to light? There's been some speculation. There's been some finger pointing on it in the past. He was in charge when we saw 3 very large banks fail. So it raises questions to a degree to where we say, okay, what's next? What's going to happen next? And I think when we look at that and we say, okay, the fact that he's leaving does make it easier because now we have a clean slate for an appointment, right? We can put someone in there who's going to work with the administration and the goals of that administration. And when you get an administration and you have a plan, you need all the people on board working on that plan. So it's positive, I think.
In his case, it may be really good citizenship, that he recognized that, Trump had won. The country had given a pretty clear message since he got actually a majority of the vote. Rather than fight with him, Gruenberg, after all, he's had so much experience there, that he may have just thought, time for me to move on. Let me ask you about one other one, which is somebody who's not leaving and not going to be removed, and that is Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Trump, has indicated that he's happy to have Powell stay, and Powell's indicated he's going to stay. What is your take on that? I mean, how do you feel about how the Federal Reserve has operated and whether or not they've been aggressive enough on inflation?
Here's where it gets tricky for me. We've talked about this, and I'm out there on the record saying I don't think that Chairman Powell has done a magnificent job. I think that he's taken too long to fight inflation when we saw that happening. I think he has been behind the 8 ball for most of the past 5 years, it would be fair to say. But do I think that he doesn't know what he's doing? That's another question. You at some point have to look and say, what is the politics in the room? Because ultimately his job is to steer the board, but that's with input from the board and also from the administration. The fact that President Trump is saying, I'm not asking him to leave, I don't want him to leave, is interesting to me. Because we know one thing, President Trump is looking to fix things. He sees a value in Chairman Powell. I think he's an intelligent man. I think that he can manage the Federal Reserve because of the experience he has. He does understand tariff. He's been involved in economics for many, many years. And if we go back to the days when we were imposing tariffs as punishment against the nations, he understood how that affected the economy as well. So I think there's value there. I think the most important thing that needs to happen is the two of them need to speak and clear some grievances and set forth on a policy that makes sense. Now, ultimately, the president shouldn't dictate, but we all know that the administration does have some power. When you're running the Federal Reserve, you have to say, where is the nation going? Because I need to protect the dollar from the trials that will come from a tariff-based economy. And what this administration is moving, we need to make sure that there's valuation there so that success can happen. And I don't believe that Powell would try to sabotage that. It just may mean some modification of the way they've leaned for the past 5 years.
Let me ask you, when you see these new people and you see what Trump has been saying, how does all that fit into having a balanced investment portfolio? And in your judgment, what component of that is involving gold and silver and working with a company like Legacy Precious Metals?
That's a great question. And I say this by saying I'm behind the changes that are to come. But I will tell you that when you have an economy that is addicted to free money and government bailout, that addiction becomes very strong. The changes we're about to make, a tariff-based reduction of government spending, it is what's needed to happen. But with any addiction, you have to fight the withdrawal from this action that we're going to be taking. We have an economy that does not know how to run on sound business financial decisions. So the changes are necessary, but there are bumps in the road. I would tell you now, more than ever, you need to diversify. We need to look at this from a big picture. If you take tariffs, right? And you take all the companies that build something overseas and bring them back. If it now costs them 25% more to do so, how do they sell in the U.S. market? Do they increase or do they try to cut their profit margin to continue sales? And if they do that, what is the effect on their balance sheets? Now we're talking about affecting equities. This is where we jump down into the rabbit hole, okay? And this is where we say, we know we still have inflation. It hasn't been beat. We know that the numbers came out. We're still there. It's sticky. We have a little ways to go yet. There's still fight there. And then you look at this and say, we're going to reduce this much money from the budget. It means jobs are going away. Federal jobs have to go away with these kind of cuts. It's what is necessary. The good news is we have a private market that can absorb those people. They're just going to have to change their mindset about how they're going to work. And that takes time as well. I believe we see a recession. It's been in the works for many years. Recessions are very hard to stop. But the important part of it is the fix is in place. So I believe the recession was going to happen regardless of who won. Here's the difference. A Trump win means it's a much shorter, less harsh recession, but there will be one. So for me, precious metals are more important now than ever because we know change is going to be difficult. And we know that it's coming. It's been promised to us. The good news is in the long run, we'll have the economy that we want. And that's the great aspect of it all. But in the meanwhile, you need that diversification.
So in that context, if somebody does want to explore diversification, how can they reach legacy precious metals, and how can they feel comfortable with the rules as set up by legacy precious metals?
You can obviously go online, legacypminvestments.com. Probably the best way, though, is to give us a call. You can reach us at 866-484-4043. And what you want to do is give us a call and ask us questions. We're going to show you all the options. My team is readily available to answer any and all questions. And most importantly, we're going to discuss your scenario. We have nothing that we need to move and try to sell you. It's not what we do. Gold holds its value. That's what it's meant to do. It should be a part of every diversified portfolio. So what we want to do is saying, knowing this volatility is coming, how do we help you? Because each person's portfolio is a little different. Gold's going to hold its value. It's going to protect your other assets. So by having that conversation, we can say, here's what you're looking at, and here's what we think makes sense. You get to select from all of the investments we have available. You get to choose what makes the most sense for you, but you're going to be speaking with someone who can explain it in a way that's understandable. And that's very important. We have very low transaction fees. We have some of the best prices in the industry while still being a full service organization. We have real-time pricing. We're very transparent, and we're easy to discuss things with. That's an important thing too. You give us a call, we answer the phone. We're here for you. We kind of look at this as we're working together to help you get to where you want to be in your investments and in your retirements and in your portfolio.
I should just mention that people who want to follow up on this can call 866-484-4043, and your team will be ready for them to sort of answer whatever they want to know.
Absolutely. And that's the important part, right? It's important to be able to ask your questions, get information that maybe you didn't even think you needed to know, right? We're going to be there. So we'll give you the complete picture, and then you can make an informed decision. The best way to remove fear and doubt about your portfolio is to know why you're doing it and understand how it works. And I think that's one of the things that's really been missing in financial planning. You get a hold of somebody, they say, you do this, you do that. But you don't know why. We're going to remove that for you. You can expect to have a conversation with us about your financial goals, what your risk tolerances are, how long you have till retirement, right? And these are going to be the things that we use to help set up your investment options. And it's important for us, and my sales team's entire goal is to make sure all that information is available to you so you make the most informed decision.
I can't let you go until we talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the Contract with America silver coin, which was created exclusively by Legacy Precious Metals. And as I understand it, listeners can now order the collectible coin on its own, but you have a new special offer for them. Would you describe this special offer for Newt's World listeners?
We came up with this today, and I think it's important. It's a special offer for Newt's World listeners. If you call us today and you decide to roll over a qualified IRA into a Legacy Precious Metals account, we're going to send you a Contract with America coin for free, directly to you, not as part of the IRA. But we're also going to do this because I think it's this important that you do this for your financial portfolio. We're also going to cover the setup fees to roll over that IRA. You get the coin, we remove the fees, but more importantly, and that's all great things to have, you get the protection of precious metals in your retirement account. We want to remove all the things that are going to stop you from doing it, and this is a great way to do it. Not only do you have no fees on it, but that Newt coin, it's a beautiful piece, and I think once you get it in your hands, you're going to appreciate it. So that's our special offer for you today. As Newt's World listeners, give us a call. We're going to waive those fees, and we're going to get that coin in your hands.
So they can call at 866-484-4043. That is, each of you can call 866-484-4043.
You give us a call. If you decide to roll over your qualified IRA, we're going to not only help you with that, but we're going to include a Contract with America coin for getting your IRA started. We'll help you set it all up. We have an entire team here to really make that process simple and easy. And more importantly, You get protected, but then you get a Newt coin. I got to tell you guys, it's a beautiful piece. You're going to love it. And it celebrates America when it was strong. And as we get back to a strong America, I think the correlation is perfect. Protect your portfolio and celebrate America.
I was very honored when I saw the coin and I realized that the folks who designed the coin got all 10 pillars of the contract on the back of the coin. I mean, so it's really a remarkable coin and a remarkable collector's item in terms of American history and a moment that really changed a lot of things. And Charles, I want to thank you for joining me and helping me and our listeners make sense of the current economic environment and how we can save for our retirement with a diverse portfolio that includes precious metals like gold and silver. And I want to let our listeners know, if they want more information, they can call Charles and his team at Legacy Precious Metals directly at 866-484-4043. That's 866-484-4043. Or visit Legacy online at legacypminvestments.com. And Charles, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out to share with us.
As always, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you to my guest, Charles Thorngren. You can learn more about Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com. Newt's World is produced by Gingrich 360 and iHeartMedia. Our executive producer is Garnsey Sloan, and our researcher is Rachel Peterson. The artwork for the show was created by Steve Penley. Special thanks to the team at Gingrich 360. If you've been enjoying Newt's World, I hope you'll go to Apple Podcast and both rate us with 5 stars and give us a review so others can learn what it's all about. Right now, listeners of Newt's World can sign up for my 3 free weekly columns at gingrich360.com/newsletter. I'm Newt Gingrich. This is Newt's World. This episode of Newt's World was brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals.